We're almost there. We're here. Let's get started.
Oh my God! There's somebody in there! Call the police!
The 8th of May, 2008. 18-year-old Joshua Maddux walked out of his house. That night, he didn't come home. His father and 2 sisters carried on as usual.
Joshua still isn't home yet?
I don't know either.
It wasn't the first time Joshua had stayed out overnight. The next morning, he still hadn't returned.
Josh still isn't home yet?
You should try calling him.
His phone kept ringing, but no one picked up. Day 2 passed. Then day 3. Nothing changed. That's when the family started to worry.
It's been 3 days and still nobody's been able to reach Joshua?
We've tried everything.
On the 4th day, his father, Mike, contacted the school.
Hello.
I'm Maddox's father, ma'am. Is my boy at school?
Sir, I was actually about to ask you about Maddux. He hasn't come to school for several days now.
The family is searching for him. The family sat down together.
We've searched everywhere and still haven't found any sign of him. We need to call the police.
By May 13, the family reported him missing.
Sir, I'd like to report a missing person.
Once they had enough information, a search was launched, but it led nowhere.
We still haven't found any trace of Joshua.
The family had no choice but to accept it. And slowly, Joshua's disappearance faded into silence. Seven years after Joshua Maddux disappeared, his family had moved away. But every now and then, his father would return to the old house, still hoping his son might come back. Then, on the afternoon of the 7th of August 2015,
Who is this?
Come back to Woodland Park. Your son has been found.
a police officer was already waiting for him.
Where is my son? I want to see my son!
The officer tried to calm him down, then led him to a nearby house that was under construction. An officer gently lifted it so he could see.
Is this my son? Oh God, what happened to him?
It was a body, lying face down, curled in a fetal position. Next to it were several clear zip bags.
We found this inside the cabin, sir.
His worst fear had come true.
This belonged to my son.
How's everything going? You holding up okay?
Chuck Murphy, the homeowner overseeing the construction, was also the one who discovered the body.
All right, boys, let's get to work.
Earlier that morning, Murphy had brought a crew to the house. They were there to demolish it. When they reached the fireplace, a large breakfast bar was blocking the way. They moved it aside. The moment they broke through the wall, the body appeared.
Stop!
The workers
my
panicked
God.
and immediately called Murphy.
Oh my God, Murphy! There's a dead body in the chimney!
What?
Wait a second. I've seen this kid before.
Murphy suddenly remembered a missing person notice he'd seen a few years earlier. The description matched. That's why Mike was called in to confirm. The remains were sent for forensic examination. It was Joshua Maddux. Amazingly, there were no signs of trauma on the body. So what caused Joshua's death? The forensic examiner carefully examined Joshua's body. There were no signs of broken bones or stab wounds. This made determining the cause of death difficult. The examiner could only conclude Joshua Maddux did not die immediately. Somehow, he became trapped inside the chimney. At the same time, the house sat on the area was surrounded by tall pine trees. There were no neighboring houses nearby. So even if Joshua had called for help, no one would have heard him.
Can anyone hear me?
Unluckily, on the day Joshua left home, the temperature had dropped to around -6.7 degrees Celsius. After about 2 or 3 days, his body became severely dehydrated. Gradually, Joshua lost consciousness and died. The house where his body was found was only 2 blocks away from the Maddux family home. Earlier search efforts had overlooked this area. The homeowner, Chuck Murphy, had returned there several times, but he never noticed anything unusual. As a result, Joshua was left undiscovered in the chimney for 7 years. On September 28, police concluded.
Our investigation suggests he attempted to enter the cabin through the chimney and became trapped inside.
The official cause of death appears to be hypothermia.
The family was devastated upon hearing the news. Meanwhile, Chuck Murphy remained at the scene. Something continued to bother him.
Oh my God.
A short time later, he arrived at the police station.
Officer, I need to report something important. I think the Joshua Maddux case isn't over.
The officer sitting across from him asked for evidence.
Tell me everything you know.
I went up there to check the metal grate covering the chimney. It was supposed to stop animals from getting inside the house, but it was gone.
Did you see any metal grate covering the chimney?
No, sir.
So Murphy believed someone had removed the metal grate. He was convinced Joshua's death was not an accident. 3 days later, they decided to reopen the case.
The autopsy report shows inconsistency.
Murphy hadn't been lying. They found a large breakfast bar, the kind that's usually fixed to the wall. According to the report, it had been lodged in the chimney. police quickly realized something was off. Who moved it and why? Joshua's clothes were found next to the fireplace, neatly folded. Meanwhile, the body was still wearing a thermal shirt. Why had Joshua taken off his clothes? Another officer rushed over with a report.
Sir, I have a few important things to report. The chimney was just wide enough for a tall, thin boy like Joshua to squeeze through. It's very possible he removed some of his clothing before climbing inside. But unfortunately, the bottom of the chimney had been blocked. Joshua became trapped inside and eventually died there.
Because of that, the case was still considered an accident. Murphy didn't agree. The clothes were inside the cabin next to the fireplace. That meant Joshua had made it inside the house. So why would he climb up the chimney? The police couldn't answer that question, but they didn't continue the investigation either. In the days following, the police kept receiving anonymous tips.
"911, what's your emergency?"
Officer, I know a man who was with Joshua on the day he disappeared.
Someone claimed a man had been seen with Joshua before. He had once bragged about killing Joshua Maddux.
It was too easy. No one will ever look twice. Trust me.
This man had a long criminal record. He had caused trouble in New Mexico and had served time in Portland and Seattle. He was now imprisoned in Texas.
Thank you for the information. May I know your name?
When police asked for a name, they didn't get an answer.
Sir, we've got a new lead in the Joshua Maddux case.
This could be our primary suspect. We need to get to the prison immediately.
He was a homeless man from Woodland Park. Despite drifting from place to place, he often returned home. But he wasn't in Woodland Park when Joshua disappeared. There was no evidence linking him to the case. He was ruled out as a suspect. Once again, the investigation hit a dead end. In 2015, a social media post surfaced that was linked to the Joshua Maddux case. A suspect was mentioned, Andy Newman. He was often seen with Joshua. Joshua went missing, as previously reported.
3 days ago. Anyone with information is urged to contact the police.
Newman moved to New Mexico. They were caring for a disabled person together. But one day, that person was stabbed to death. Andy disappeared. Police launched an investigation. Andy was arrested shortly after. After multiple investigations, he was charged with various crimes across 6 states in the U.S. The post quickly gained attention. Many comments came from people claiming to be Joshua's friends. They said the last time they saw him, he was with Andy. A wave of evidence started coming in. Everyone was urging the police to reopen the case. Police were also aware of the viral post. They were under constant pressure. Every day, countless people contacted the station. They kept bringing up the name Andy and demanded the case be reopened. However, it wasn't enough to convince the police. They couldn't launch an investigation based on a social media post. Communication became more difficult. Police started refusing calls. They even discontinued the search for Joshua.
He's alive. He's living in a nearby town.
Even so, public pressure made it impossible to close the case easily. Of course, drugs could always be used to explain unusual cases like this. Toxicology testing was conducted during the autopsy. The goal was to find traces of drugs. However, the condition of the body created a major obstacle. The level of decomposition was so severe that the test results were unreliable. The house where Joshua died had once been a party spot. Wild parties and gambling had been held there regularly. It's possible Joshua had used drugs at some point. While hallucinating, his behavior may have become erratic. And somehow, he ended up inside the chimney. The people at the party were focused on drinking and drugs. They likely had no idea what had just happened to Joshua. This theory ties together the scattered details, but it's still missing the most important thing: evidence. As a result, police couldn't pursue this line of investigation any further. Finally, a press conference was held. There was no evidence of outside involvement. The possibility that Joshua Maddux was killed and placed in the chimney was ruled out.
Sir, it was an accident. I'm very sorry.
With no further evidence, the case was closed. The Maddux family was allowed to take his remains home. On the 17th of October 2015, they held a memorial service for Joshua at a church. At last, after 7 years missing, Joshua Maddux returned to his family. The case closed amid a web of contradictions. No answers, no one held accountable. To this day, we may never know the truth. What was Joshua doing in that abandoned house? And who put him in the chimney?